Hello and welcome to this new episode where we are going to discuss concepts. Concepts are a very important part of thinking. If you want to have a beautiful mind, you need to be able to handle concepts. However, most people find concepts vague, abstract, and academic. This is especially so in our country, where there is a hunger for practical, hands-on, do-it-now instructions. Concepts are the parents of practical idea. If you can locate the parents of a child, then you can find the brothers and sisters and even other relatives of that child. Once upon a time, the mayor of a small town in Australia told me that they had a problem with commuters who drove into the town in the morning and left their cars parked in the street all day. This meant that shoppers could not find anywhere to park in order to visit the shops. What is the operating concept of a parking meter? The concept could be to get revenue from people's need to park. That may happen, but it is probably not the main purpose. Another concept might be to get as many people as possible to use the same parking space in a day. This seems more likely. Now, if that is the concept, we can carry out that concept in another way. No parking meters save capital costs, and you can park anywhere you like in marked spaces, but you have to leave your headlights full on. You would not want to leave your car parked for more than few minutes, as you would be running your battery down. So people would park, run into the shop, and hurry back as quickly as possible. Of course, there are a lot of practical flaws in this idea, such as forgetful people, but it could be implemented in certain defined areas. For example, you always eat food. But do you ever actually eat food as such? You do not. You eat steak, you eat chicken, you eat strawberries. You always eat some specific type of food and not food in general. Food is a concept. A hamburger is a practical idea. Why bother with concepts? One of the main values of identifying a concept is that this allows us to breed other ideas from the concept. Maybe there are other ways of getting maximum usage of limited parking space. Most attempts to deal with traffic congestion in cities have one major flaw. If traffic is reduced through people leaving their cars at home, those who benefit most are those who do not leave their cars at home. And now we have clearer streets. So we set up a concept objective. How do we reward those who leave their cars at home? One approach is to require everyone who wants to drive into the city to buy a special permit, which would be displayed. Every car owner is entitled to buy one such permit. To drive into the city, however, you actually need 3 permits. So what do? You buy the 2 additional permits from someone who leaves his or her car at home. That person now gets paid for not driving into the city. If there is a scarcity of permits, then the price goes up, and only those willing to pay the higher price can drive into the city. The operating concept is to put a price on driving into the city. The concept of putting a price on driving into the city could be carried out in another way with a simple auction of a limited number of permits. This last idea, however, does not reward those who leave their cars at home. Pick out the concept. Let us take the following example. What is the concept of accident insurance? The concept might be that all those exposed to the risk contribute to those who actually suffer from the accident. In another example, domestic dogs and cats and rabbits come under the concept of pets. That could also include canaries and white mice. How would you define the concept of a pet? You might suggest that it is a living creature kept at home for no practical purpose other than to be loved. This is not completely correct, because your cat can catch mice and your dog may act as a watchdog. So we might amend the concept. A living creature kept at home for the main purpose of being loved, including companionship. Whenever you are listening to someone talking, you should be making an effort to pick out the concept used. This is a sort of a shorthand, a summary, the underlying essence of what is being said. Take a discussion on education in which changes in education are suggested. You think you have picked out the suggested concept change as follows. The old concept of education was to develop a liberal mind that was cultured and could learn to do anything. A lot of subject matter was taught to develop this mind. The new concept might be to equip youngsters to function in society and to contribute to society. This means much more emphasis on thinking skills, learning how value is created in society, practical mathematics, and so on. Is that correct? There are words which do seem to describe these two concepts: liberal education and utilitarian education. Unfortunately, the word utilitarian has a restricted negative meaning. It suggests that you educate people immediately as carpenters, plumbers, and shop assistants, for instance. This is quite different from teaching thinking skills or value creation in society. It often happens if concept words do exist, then we risk being forced to look at things in these standard ways. In fact, the type of education suggested falls between the existing concepts of liberal education and utilitarian education. The same thing happens with the direct teaching of thinking. Educators say philosophy does that. This is not true at all. Philosophy does not teach the practical operations of thinking. Even when philosophy does teach logic, this is only a small part of everyday thinking, where perception is even more important than logic. When you believe you have extracted the concept from what is being said, you can check on this by asking a question. It seems to me that the concept here is that correct? Vagueness. Concepts always seem rather vague. You can imagine a hamburger, you can see a hamburger, you can taste a hamburger, you can enjoy a hamburger. You cannot do these things with a vague concept of food. You can go to the pet shop to buy a puppy or a kitten. You cannot go with the vague idea of buying a pet. In daily life, you can probably get by very well without ever thinking of concepts. But if you want to generate new ideas, design ways forward, or understand complex situations, then you need to develop some skill with concepts. The word reward is a concept. The reward may take various forms: a smile, a star given by a teacher, monetary reward, a prize, recognition, promotion. A reward is an appreciation of effort and achievement. The concept is vague, but very useful and very practical. Say an employer wants to reward his staff. The concept comes first, and then he or she needs to figure out how to do it and what sort of reward would mean most to the staff. You set off on a journey, you know the roads that you need to take. You do not consciously say, "Now I'm heading north." You take the road you know and happen to be heading north. If, however, you are setting out on a long journey and not familiar with the roads, then the instructions might be head north until you come to Castleford, and then head due east until you reach Terence. Here the broad directions are very important. It is exactly the same with concepts. When you are dealing with things with which you are familiar, you do not seem to need concepts, even though they are. When you are dealing with less familiar matters, then concepts become very useful. Don't tell me to buy food. Tell me exactly what you want me to buy. You do not go into the street in your underwear, although usually you are wearing underwear. The underwear is not visible, but it is there all the time. It is the same with concepts. They are there. They underlie the practical things we do, even when we are not conscious of them. Levels of concept. This is yet another difficulty when dealing with concepts. What level of concept do we use? Food is a concept, but so is protein. You could even say steak was a concept because there are many different types of steak. So we have 3 levels of concept, from very broad to the more specific. How do you know which level to use? There is no magic rule for choosing the level of concept to use. Sometimes the very broad level is appropriate. A first aid agency might say people need food and shelter, and might suggest that any sort of food would do. In the Irish potato famine caused by a blight on potato crops, The British government sent over wheat, which was useless because the Irish did not know how to use, cook, or eat the wheat. On the whole, very broad concepts are not much use, except to contrast different concepts, such as, should we run education on the basis of reward or on the basis of punishment? Here, the very broad concepts do serve a purpose. At the other extreme are concepts that are so specific, they are almost practical ideas. While steak is a concept, it excludes fish, chicken, and pasta. The danger with concepts that are too specific is that they narrow the thinking. If you're thinking in terms of concept of monetary reward rather than reward, you may not realize that a smile, word of appreciation, or some sort of recognition might mean more to your staff than money. Achievement is a broad concept. Youngsters need achievement. If we narrowed that concept to success in sports, then we might build more sports facilities. But there are many youngsters who are not interested in sport. There may also be much cheaper ways of providing achievement. The general rule for concepts is not too broad, not too specific. In practice, you would try out different levels of concept to find the level that seemed to work best. You come to get a feel for the right level. Types of concept. Just as there are different levels of concept, there can be different types of concept. Someone comes up with a new business idea. This is to create fast food with no premises. So a central kitchen produces Pete's food. This is a food of a standard type, quality, and price. Any eating place can have a notice in the window saying, "We also serve Pete's food at Pete's prices." What are the concepts involved here? There are the business concepts. No need to have your own expensive real estate. You use other people's places. Because the range is limited and the product is standard, there is less wastage and more economy of scale. Instead of having many kitchens, you have one central kitchen. Then there is a concept of branding. You can put more money into advertising the brand in a way no individual restaurant could afford to. The brand is also widely available so customers can develop brand loyalty. Then there are the customer value concepts. There is the reassurance of the major brand name. This means quality and predictability. You know what you are going to get. You know what you are getting regardless of the actual outlet. There is a reassurance on price. You know what it will cost you. In fact, there are almost all the values available with traditional fast food chains. The ambience may not be guaranteed, although even this could be remedied with inspections and standards so that unsuitable places did not get Pete's food. There is a delivery concept. This is a key part of business because without delivery, an idea is useless no matter how great it might be. The delivery concept is to make use of other people's premises. Delivery to these premises might be on a daily basis or less often if the product can be stored. There may be business concepts. Why would this be a profitable business? There are mechanism or delivery concepts. How does this actually get done? What are the real and perceived values to the buyer, client, or customer? There are information concepts. How do people find out about this? There are acceptance concepts. Why should people accept this idea? There are competition concepts. What might competitors do and how will this affect us? In short, there can be different types of concept. Every area can have its concept, just like every area can have its practical ideas. Exercise. Concepts are tricky. Getting the concept habit is not easy, but instead of backing away from the most important component of the beautiful mind, it is worth putting more effort into developing the concept habit. Here is an exercise that will help develop just such a habit. Make an effort to pick out the concept or concepts in each of the following situations. Do this on your own or compare and discuss your thinking with someone else or a group. you should always try to pick out the major operating concept. You can also try to pick out the different types of concept in each case. Hotels, holidays, internet, shoes, telephone, stairs, advertising, banks, bars, lawyers. Completeness. Concepts are rarely complete. Concepts capture the main essence, but may not cover all aspects. What is the concept of a tree? A way of centralizing energy reception from the sun and water and nutrients from the soil. A way of putting together a volume of photosensitive material, leaves, in a more efficient way than spread out on the ground, grass. A way of raising photosensitive material above the ground in a competitive environment. Bushes and other trees block the sunlight. A biological organism with long-term viability. Some trees live for 800 years compared to the life of a grass. Each of these is a valid concept. Not one covers the whole situation completely. There is instead a collection of relevant concepts. You could seek to put them all together in a single concept, but it would likely be complex and far from complete. Though they do overlap, a concept is not exactly the same as a definition. The definition of a Dalmatian may be a dog with a coat of black spots on a white background. Of course, there is far more to a Dalmatian, as any other breeder would tell you. In fact, Dalmatians produce a special chemical in their urine, which other dogs do not. The concept of a Dalmatian might be a striking-looking dog that is friendly and easy to train. The definition of an election might be the expression of choice by a group of people. The concept might be a mechanism whereby those with a right to choose express their choice in an objective manner and a readiness to accept the result of that choice. The readiness to accept might seem unnecessary, but is in fact a key component. Compare and contrast. Once you are comfortable dealing with concepts and extracting concepts from what is being said or written, you can start to compare and contrast concepts. How different is this concept from that one? Are these two apparently different concepts actually similar, and just expressions of one broader concept? Has the concept really changed, or is this just a variation? Does this concept actually include the other concept at a different level? Working with concepts provides a different perspective and perception. What is the concept of public transport? Is the public part important? Does this imply the concept of use without having to own? Is this a key component of public transport? The fact that many people are moving in a comparatively small traveling space. This is high-density travel. If everyone in the bus had to get out and drive his or her own car, that would take up a great deal more space. Is the concept pay for use only as required? You do not have to own the bus, garage it, or maintain it. Transport is now purchasable in small quantities. There are negative concepts too. Public transport is not available on demand as to time and to starting point. There is limited flexibility with regard to choice of destination. There is less privacy. Now let's summarize concepts. Concepts are a very important part of thinking and a key component of a beautiful mind. Concepts are like parents that breed children, ideas, and like road junctions that open up several other roads. Concepts are important in generating ideas and designing ways forward. Where there is no routine available, concepts are essential. You need to seek to pick out the concept behind what is being said or read. What is the concept here? Once you can pick out concepts, you can compare and contrast them. Are they really different? What are the points of difference? Concepts will always seem vague because they have to be translated into specific ideas before they can be used. You can be using a concept without being aware of the concept you are using. There may be different types of concept: business concept, value concept, mechanism concept, operating concept, etc. Wherever there are ideas, there also are concepts. There are different levels of concept, from the very broad to the quite specific. In general, the middle layer is most useful. Concepts are not always complete, but they carry important aspects of what is being taught or done. Concepts, definitions, and descriptions do overlap. Descriptions need to be complete to define and separate. Concepts seek to distill the essence. Skill in thinking in concept terms only comes with practice. Part of your mind should be watching and noticing the concepts being used by yourself and by others. That brings us to the end of this episode. Stay tuned for the next episode where we will be discussing alternatives.